Welcome to Beyond HR, the podcast for people first leaders who know that HR is about more than checklists and compliance. I'm Paige, your co host, and we will explore the real challenges shaping today's workplaces. From burnout and belonging to strategy and storytelling, we're bringing you honest conversations, practical insights, and a fresh take on what it means to lead with heart in the world of work. Before we dive into our episode, a quick shout out to Manpower for generously providing the space where we record Beyond HR. And here's a quick word from our launch sponsor.
If you're feeling stretched thin, juggling big changes, emotional labor, and communication breakdowns, you're not alone. Hi everyone, I'm Dan Kaplan, founder of Bring Disc to Life, an online community for aspiring leaders and HR professionals. We give you the strategies, tools, and encouragement to communicate in ways that increase your influence while lowering your stress. Using DISC, the 5 behaviors, and mindfulness, you'll learn to stay grounded, read minds, and frame your message to influence others. We have live workshops every month, group coaching to unpack tough situations, and tons of easy-to-use scripts, strategies, and resources that you can apply right away without adding more to your plate. So come refuel with a community that gets you and wants to help you speak your truth in a way that's heard. Join us at confidentcommunicator.com and click on community. That's confidentcommunicator.com. Lead yourself and others will follow.
You know, I'm an accidental HR person. I started out in the hotel business and I was working in marketing and ended up an HR person saw me and said, you'd be great in HR. Mm-hmm. And part of it was because of the way I was advocating for policy or change. And that's really how it came about. And I had 2 opportunities. One in hotels, we split jobs. And so I ended up becoming a director of HR or assistant director of HR at a hotel in DC where I could learn from the ground up from great people to teach me, or I could have been a director, but I would also be doing marketing aspects. And I said, I want to go that direction. So I sort of fell into it. But I think that the journey has been, I always like to navigate or migrate to organizations that need or looking for change. And so I feel like I'm a change person who can come in to help where there's need for policy or just an overall look at the organization to see how can we be more innovative, creative, or change some of the things that are in place. And that's sort of where I go. I kind of make the change and sometimes I move on because I'm looking for something different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, yeah. John, obviously you are the Maryland SHRM Council, I think, director, right? That's
correct.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about, some of the things that you've even done for Maryland SHRM, because the way that you're talking, you are a change type of person, right? And when it comes to change, I've seen a lot of really positive change within Maryland SHRM, and then all of our local chapters too. So talk to me a little bit about that.
At Maryland SHRM, one of the things that I notice is the chapters work in isolation. They do their thing. And what I wanted to create when I came into Maryland SHRM was this, how do we collaborate, share ideas, bring that together, and also not be afraid of sharing it. Because I think in the past you're afraid, if I don't do this, I'll lose my member to somebody else if I advertise their events. And in most cases, it's a value add. Mm-hmm. So being able to share, here are all the great things that we do as a state, which has helped because I think the collaboration has been better. Our chapters are continuing to grow and improve. They rely on each other for information. So I feel like that's been probably the biggest thing is how do we collaborate more and share those ideas?
Yeah, I love that. So kind of looking beyond even kind of your HR title now and then also Maryland SHRM side, beyond those things, who would you say that you are at your core and what fuels the passion for the work that you do?
I kind of am a strategist, I think. I like the strategy of HR and figuring out like how do we solve a problem? What is it that we're really looking at? And then bringing forward the policy, the procedure that works best in the organization, as opposed to this is what we're supposed to do. So I think at the core, what is it that the behavioral strengths that you
Strength
take,
finders.
the strengths finder, and when I take the strengths finder, I'm like the innovative arranger type of person that likes the futuristic portion of my brain. What is it that we can anticipate? How can we modernize it and bring our company forward and move into the future? That I think is my core
I love that.
for HR.
Yeah, John, you and I are very much alike. I actually took the strength finders, and have you ever taken it more than once?
I have only taken it once.
Okay. So I've taken it like 4 times at this point in my life, just to see how you've actually grown and how you've changed based on, what you've done in the past. And I've actually grown a lot, and now I'm very much like you, which is really cool to see.
Oh, wow.
Makes sense why we we kind of connected from the beginning, right?
That's right. For sure.
Yeah.
Now, understanding that aspect of how you look at organizations, how would you translate that to individuals? Because obviously we can be our own organization within ourselves. So how would you take the same approach, but to like an individual that might be like, oh my gosh, I just don't know what to do with myself right now?
I was thinking about this when I was working at the car care company in Frederick. We came up with a strategy, almost like here's what you need. Here are the trainings you could take, how you could do it on your own. And it's almost like gamification of succession planning. And they were able to say, okay, I took these courses, I studied this, and they learned on their own to grow themselves. But one of the things I think we miss with our employees is seeing clearly the pathway that they can grow. How can they grow? The other thing is leaving that carve out where you can do something for yourself, right? Like, I like this. I love Canva. I love preparing presentations. Oh my gosh, you have to be our presentation Canva person in the organization and bring their talent, their natural talents in, but let them see, oh, here's a path of where I can use those talents in the organization. Because sometimes I think we pigeonhole ourselves because we go, here, this is what the job is. But when somebody comes into the organization and they have these other talents, we go, gosh, they could do this for us. They have this talent. We lock ourselves in as the organization, but we need to show individuals that work for us or people we're coaching, like, here's this opportunity. Go ahead and live it. And sometimes, too, the organization doesn't have a role for them because they've outgrown us, right? But helping people move on or helping people go to the next organization, they think of that, they remember that, and they value that, and they bring it back. It comes back to you. So again, that goes back to the Maryland SHRM thing. You have to be able to let it go. Like, it's okay. Sometimes it needs to move on.
Sure. I have a follow-up question if you don't mind too. Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to us as HR professionals, how can we prioritize our own career growth without feeling guilty about stepping away from maybe what we do on the daily?
So being able to frame it for your organization that your learning brings value into your organization. So whether it's an education, if I'm going out and pursuing a degree, or if I'm taking a course maybe or a seminar through SHRM or something else, but being able to bring that value back and showing your organization this means something to you as well. My personal time, my personal opportunities. But I think we have to let that go. Like, even so, for me, I work out a lot. Well, that value of me working out means I'm healthier at work, right? So, but I like to work out. So being able to do that and bring that back, I'm bringing it into the organization, and I have no guilt about carving out that time each day, even no guilt for the time I take away from my family or other activities, that I need to put that time into working out because it's going to make me healthier for other things. So everything you do, if you're miserable and you haven't pursued it, you're not going to be of any value to anybody else, home or personally. You know, you have to think, or work or personally, you have to think about that when you're looking at that. So the guilt has to kind of take a back seat when you're looking at that pursuit.
Yep.
Digging deeper with that last phrase, what game plan or what action plan would you give somebody that is struggling with that guilt? Because a lot of times there's this self-guilt, but there's also that almost like implied guilt from other people that you're not as dedicated in your job as everybody else because everybody else has to be here 20 hours a day, but you're only working your 8 hours because you want to have personal family time. So how do you help somebody navigate that?
Well, so that's an interesting question, right? Because so here's my thing that I'll say. You don't always have to explain everything to everybody, right? You need to do it for you. You know, if I want to eat a cookie today because I wanted to eat a cookie, I don't have to justify eating a cookie to anyone because it's impacting my health. So the same thing with your personal growth. You want to do something that you have value, that adds value to your life. You don't have to justify it to anybody else. But you have to, be respectful. Obviously, if you have a spouse or children, that you have to make sure they're buying in to the time that you might be away from them, or the same with the job. You have to make sure it's not planned, open enrollment at work. Let's not schedule our vacation during open enrollment, but you have to think about those type of things. But I think you have to put it aside and say, this adds to my life, to my value, and to my goals. I would say, think about what your future looks like. Think ahead and make sure what you're doing adds value to your future and what your goals are. Because sometimes we work in the moment because we think something's valuable today, but really, what's the end goal? What are we all working towards? So make sure that's in alignment as well. Having a good future plan for yourself. We make them for work all the time, but do it for yourself.
In your experience, do you feel like HR people have a hard time doing that for themselves, even though we're tasked with doing it for our organizations and our companies? Do you think that on an average, what would you say is the percentage of HR people that actually have a plan for their own future?
Oh, I would say it's probably very, very small, like maybe, less than a quarter, 25%. Because I think that we are caught up in the moment of change in the jobs that we're working in, that we forget to plan that career growth or future growth. And our jobs take us in directions all over the place. So I think, blocking your time in the day is key, and blocking it, even your external time in a way that you can make sure you've carved out that time. And also being transparent. I think sometimes we hide, I have this training I want to do from 11 to noon. I hope nobody comes in my office. Well, be transparent. Tell your team, I'm taking a training. I'm taking this class on, FMLA or whatever it is. But being transparent even with your boss. Here's what I have planned for my development this month. And I think we lack that sometimes because we are not feeling guilty. So we're not sharing it, but we should openly share it.
I really love what you just said of openly sharing it, even with your manager per se. Like, here is actually how I'm going to grow myself this month. I like that during kind of a touch base because, it's kind of implied in a sense, and it's kind of assumed that people know that you're doing all of these trainings. But, in order to actually do that and show that you are growing and get maybe even the kudos that you've been deserving for a very long time, because I know us HR pros, we are very humble folks, and we feel weird when we actually get good feedback. I know even from a personal perspective, I'm like, what? I did a good job? It's just kind of like that imposter syndrome. It really comes quickly and it creeps up. But that kind of leads me into my next question for you. So, HR pros in general, they often find themselves in a very unique position where, you have to support employees and maintain those professional boundaries. But here's the thing. I found it can be tough to build real connections and also feel a sense of belonging within, the organization without crossing lines. And have you ever navigated this in your career? And if you have, what advice would you have for somebody struggling in this area who feels isolated?
In a company, and I'm going to say transparent again, but being transparent about what you don't know. I've worked in gaming, I've worked in car care, I've worked in healthcare environments. There are things I don't know. And listen, as HR professionals, we love our acronyms, FMLA, HR, and people are like, what is that?
It's a love-hate relationship.
But
Yeah.
yeah. And so in companies, we also have that, right? Where people are using terminology that we don't understand. So sometimes I think it's okay that you don't know something. It's okay when you feel that way. But when you're walking in a room with, like going into a SHRM meeting or a new meeting with HR professionals, being able to say, I'm trying to figure out how I can connect here or how I can engage, and finding people, instead of finding groups, find the one, right, that can pull you in. And using that at FC SHRM, my career in SHRM, I would show up at a meeting and sit down and go to the meeting and go home and meet people, but not really remember any people I was meeting because I wasn't really making those great connections. And then I filled out a survey and said, I will volunteer. And somebody called me and she connected with me, and then she became that mentor and took care of me and put me in the right place. And then all of a sudden I'm planning the conferences and engaging with other people, and people are interested in what I have to say. It changes. But it also builds your confidence too, because now you're dealing with challenges and other people are dealing with challenges, and you're starting to learn, oh, people do care about what I think or my ideas. And you start to get that network of people. Also, because sometimes in your jobs, we've all been in those places where HR is the place that hires and fires people. You still see it as personnel, not as a human resources. So being able to go out and develop relationships with other HR professionals, they get it. And they help you get it. It doesn't mean that you won't be successful in converting people's opinions about HR, because you will if you are going out and networking with people who have experienced it.
Yeah.
When my first job, personnel was on the outside of my office. It wasn't the name of my department, but they hadn't removed the sign yet. So.
Why is it so hard to build that confidence? Why is it so hard to build that confidence as the HR person when part of your job is helping other people in an organization build their confidence?
Good question.
Sometimes I think we're the HR experts, right? We know HR and they see us that way. But truly, HR professionals need to understand the organization. How does it all work? So when you go out and you move into the operational side of the business and start to understand operations, then it becomes more collaborative, and then they see you as an ally, as someone that's partnering with them that can help them grow their side of the business, their team. When you approach it with care, how many times have we done this? I can't believe what they did. I can't believe what just happened. Well, right. But we're right. But we're in HR. We know this is what you should do. But on the other flip side of it is, how could we grow people and develop people so they know what we know, so we can help them understand this is a better way to do it. So when we walk in and partner with them, we learn what they're doing. We're going to help them where they are, right? As opposed to, you should be here, because that's where I am. We're going to say, okay, I'm going to meet you where you are, and we're going to help you grow through this. And how do you implement training if you don't know where everybody is?
Mm.
And the other thing is, how do you hold them accountable if no training is in place? If you don't have interview skills training in your organization and you're mad because they ask everybody if they're pregnant, well, did you put the training in place?
Yeah.
So you have to hold them accountable for what they're learning, not what you believe they know.
Mm.
So, when we're talking about your career in HR overall, what personal growth lessons have you learned along the way?
I think the strongest one I can convey is don't take it personally.
Mm.
It's not about you. It's about forming the organization. It's about the people that work in the organization. It's about collaborating, but it's not about you. I think that's where we get, how many, I've gotten the emails where they're, all caps, and someone just didn't take the caps off, right? It's,
Yeah.
let's have the right conversations, but it's not about you. So as we approach the day, just taking that out of it. And I would say, I've taken it personally. I've had those conversations where someone goes, that's not what I meant. And so starting off the conversation on the right foot. I would also say that you want to make sure you do think about, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be in 10, 15, 20 years in your career? What's that look like? And you also need to account for what you want to do personally. Do you like to travel? Do you want to have children? Do you want to have a family? Thinking about those personal growth and the career growth and what it's going to look like. Because what a child needs at 4 and what a child needs at 14 are very different, and you have to account for that. I'm now dealing with a teenager who needs me to drive her places, and so, which is okay, but it's a different life than when you went and picked your child up and after school and went home. There's a lot of activities. So is that going to fit in 10 years, 15 years to you being able to do other things outside of work?
That's a really, really good point. And so when we're talking about kind of like looking to the future, what do you think? Let me kind of rephrase. When we think about our future, have you ever had somebody mentor you, or have you ever mentored somebody on what it could look like in the future, 5, 10 years from now?
So my coaching and mentoring for myself, people that mentor me, I've had different mentors along the way. And it usually is in the moment, like what the next step is, but it's never really been the future part, right? When I've talked to other people, or coached others, I would say, I have talked about that. Like, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And it has to be in alignment with your plan. I've also talked to people about thinking, are they in the right place, right? The right industry, or the right career. And I'm not talking about HR, but I'm talking about other career plans. But I'm also talking about employees that didn't work for me necessarily, people that I've met through other things. But I think that in that, getting them to ask the question, what is my dream job? What would be my dream job? And if your dream job doesn't include what you're doing now, how do you get to that? And what does that look like? Because if you're not planning for the future, you're only going to move incrementally, and that could be very slow. If you're trying to move faster to get to that happy place, you need to make sure you're thinking about the future, and that'll help you put that growth plan in place.
We have something special for you this launch month on Beyond HR, a partnership with the People Readiness Company. They help teams thrive through change by focusing on what really drives transformation: people. Their platform offers daily practice, real time coaching, and tools like the Readiness Queue designed to build alignment, emotional intelligence, and adaptability. And here's the best part. They're offering free access to their full platform, including bi-weekly sessions, for 6 months starting July 7th for 12 of our listeners. It's first come, first serve, so email us at beyondhrpodcast@gmail.com if you want in. Big thanks to the People Readiness Company. And now, back to the episode.
How do you how do you navigate that particular thought process of where I want to be without feeling afraid of how that's going to impact you in the now? And meaning, somehow I have a self epiphany that this is not what I want to do, but this is where I'm at. How do I tell my boss that, hey, I think this is not what I want to do, without the fear of, you know what, maybe you shouldn't be here. Let's go ahead and take your resignation effective immediately. How would you coach somebody through that?
Yeah, I would make sure that they have, you want to have a bit of a parachute. You don't want to be just jumping out of the plane. But what's that look like? And but I think having the conversation with your boss or your leader to be able to say, here are some things I'm thinking about in my life. It doesn't have to be that moment where you're moving on, but it could be, here are my aspirations. In the future, I would love to be this or love to do this. And you could talk about it in a general sense where you're not talking directly, in 3 months I'm thinking about leaving. But you could be talking about it, and you could find that your leader says, have you thought about this? Have you thought about, being a coach or a mentor? It also depends on the level of respect you have for that leader too. Because if your leader is really good at aligning with you and they support you, they're going to support you even if you might want to leave in 6 months. Because there's people, there's a threshold, right? Sometimes I've been in organizations, I'm in the way.
Yeah.
Because the next step is me, and I'm not leaving. So sometimes you have to figure out how you can help them look at other things or other opportunities, and guide them, because they get very frustrated. Employees will get frustrated when people are in their way because they want to stay with an organization, but they can't see their way to other things or other opportunities. So helping to guide them to that is a good thing.
So your HR career overall, if you had to start over, would you do anything differently?
I think I would. I would definitely consider, I'm preaching, I guess, the story of what I think people should do, which is I would think more about where do I want to be at this point and this point, and be a little more focused on getting there, and thoughtful in getting there, rather. So I think that's where I would change. I would also look at the industries or the places I want to be in. Now we have so many resources like Glassdoor, right, where you can look up a company and do, see what's going on behind the curtain. But I think I would do more research about some of the companies I worked in, just not because they were bad companies, but were they properly in line with what I wanted to do, and what are in their plans, reading some of the reports about how they're growing, and is that a fit for me?
Yeah, that's a good point, especially about fit, because being in HR, can be tough enough. So finding an organization that actually aligns with what, your values are, what your purpose is, I think could fuel somebody's passion again. Sometimes I've found that people have gotten into organizations and they're in HR and then they just split because they think that's what HR is. And because it didn't align with what they actually believed in, and that can be really tough. So I really like how you mentioned, planning out everything and really thinking about and doing research before actually, jumping ship from another organization to another. So I love that.
And I know typically when we, even when we're coaching employees that may be leaving, or people that we know and bump into about, how to look for a job and how to interview. And I sometimes find myself giving people advice on proper interview questions and how to answer them. Because you made a comment that kind of sparked a quick question in my mind. We don't often interview the company itself. to make sure that the company aligns with what we want out of life. Because either we're in survival mode, I need a job right now, so I'll take whatever, or it's the only job in the area. So what would be a way that you would coach maybe a person early in their career to say, hey, this is the way that you should interview the company that you're interviewing for?
Yeah, I think you need to assess humility and confidence, right? So we can be confident and still be humble as we're doing our interview. We don't want to walk in and feel like people need us, right? And in the sense that make them feel like that, right? But we want to walk in and have that, I need to know this, right? I need to understand who this organization is so that it helps me. So being able to go in and asking questions, be curious is probably the best answer. And most people love to talk about themselves and their organizations, especially if they're passionate. If you're meeting with someone who really loves the organization, it's a great opportunity for you to explore more opportunities, more questions. And I go back, we do this in interview skills training. Don't over talk. But if you're interviewing, it's the over talker that probably will spill the beans. So as an interviewer, go for it. Ask them the questions because they're going to share. And if they overshare, it's to your benefit to get the real answers. So I would say, just go in and have your questions ready and don't be afraid to ask about it. But you might want to think about how those questions can also benefit the organization. Like if you're asking a question about tuition reimbursement or supportive education or growth, how's that look and how does your question, how could you frame it to say, do you have a plan for employee growth in your organization? And that way it's really speaking about not you personally, but speaking about the organization as a whole. So you don't come in looking like you're asking so much for yourself, but you're learning about the organization. So maybe reframe that question a little differently.
Yeah. And one example that I can even think of, so I interview companies, and especially whenever I was kind of out in the market, I'm no longer in the market, luckily, but with this past company, I really vetted them out. I had really nothing to lose. I had at least 6 months until remote work was being fully taken away from my previous organization. And so I had really nothing to lose. And so I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to ask these really hard questions. And kind of to your point, Will, I wasn't afraid at that point because I didn't have anything to lose. It does make you feel a little bit more fearful when you kind of have something to lose, or you're just really tired of the other organization that you're working for and you're not making strides, whatever the reason. But one of the things, especially when it comes to like volunteering, so volunteering is really near and dear to my heart, clearly. That's why I'm back as president of CV SHRM for the second term. But when I went in, I said, how do you see your employees volunteering their time? Like, are you actually supportive of it? Then they would give me their answer. And then I say, great. I'm so glad to hear that because I am a part of, my local SHRM chapter. I've been a volunteer since XYZ. And it's really actually brought me a lot of leadership skills that I think that I can bring to the table. So it was kind of cool how I was able to ask the question about them and then bring it back to what you said, John, of how can this actually help them too? So it kind of gave you more of a time to shine. So even if it's looking at it that way, give your time to shine. You might actually have a one-up over another candidate that aren't asking these questions.
I agree with that. And I think the development, like presenting it in that way, demonstrates that, one, you're out there networking, you have this network, but also that you're willing to grow yourself. You're presenting your best side. And I love how you asked the question as well.
Very good, very good. Now, one of the topics that I've heard you talk about briefly, but then as the more I did research about you, I noticed that there's a trend, is a little bit more, and this is kind of shifting a little bit the conversation, but generational diversity in the workplace. I know the first time that I heard you make a comment was a conversation you and your daughter were having about work. And I would love to hear that story again, because I think obviously Paige hasn't heard it, but also what the nuance of the conversation was and how we can, as HR leaders, help with that, going forward.
Yeah, so my daughter and I were riding home in the car. We actually ended up pulling the car in the driveway, and because we were so engaged in the conversation, we didn't get out of the car. But the conversation was about people who had accepted jobs in the government and then were told, because you're in your probationary period, we're now going to end your employment. And what I learned from that experience of having that conversation with her is this is framing in her mind how she will accept work and the conditions that she will accept a promotion at work when she gets a job. She's going to expect, if I'm taking this promotion, there's some guarantee for me to, if I don't succeed, to still have a job with the organization. And I was sitting there, I thought, well, it's actually brilliant if you think about it, because we do this all the time. We promote people who are talented, but we don't always give them that opportunity to go back into the role that they were in or find something in the organization, because there is nothing. So they end up losing their job because they weren't successful. And that's unfortunate. But as generations, we all have things that frame what we do or how we do it. And the cohorts, the generational cohorts, yeah, they're all different. The people in it are different. But the overall experience, these experiences shape how work looks in the future. And that's what we're seeing when we look at generational diversity and how the workforce has changed. Because when I started in work, I didn't have an HRIS system. I had a spreadsheet that I used to track employees and keep track of who was here and not here. And I had probably close to 300 employees that I put on that spreadsheet. But now I've worked so many different HRIS systems, and they're always elevating, but I'm grateful for that. But I have that experience of tracking data and paper files that we're moving out of, which is a good thing. But that shapes your HR career too, what you come into. And then I love sitting back and watching a new person come into HR that is out of school or just learning out of a different environment, and they have so many ideas. And I learned from that as well. So it's that reverse mentoring kind of thing where I'm learning from others. We have to be open to that, but that helps us grow as well. But what she did in that car as an HR professional, she shaped my mind about how I think about what's coming into HR and even thinking about it today. Like, how can I get ahead of that? Because it's coming.
Yeah. How do you help an organization that may be still operating under old school rules? I always say, like, the 1980s thought process of work, where, it's company loyalty is number one. I started working here from high school, and I won't come to work unless my limbs are on the bare thin. Like, how do you help leaders with that mindset transition into, hey, this is not the way that business is going to be sustainable going forward?
For me, I sit at the table in the exec team, and I'm able to lead from that direction. And I've gone at the table and brought up topics and been able to discuss it, because I need to affect the change, because we can't move forward. We can't grow the organization. So you have to talk about it from a position of authority, but you also have to say, you also can't approach it like, I can't believe you all are doing this, right? You have to approach it like, I would love to know how we arrived at this and what's going on, so that you're approaching it from a curiosity versus approaching it from a, this is wrong. And what you then find is that people, that the shields start to come down, and the dialogue gets a little better, because you then don't have to think about being so precise with your words when you're introducing it. In the beginning, I think you have to think about that, because the policy may not have come from anybody sitting in that room. It may have been somebody that worked in HR before you, or somebody, that they believe this to be the truth, and this is how we proceed. But you have to change it and explain why, give them the benefits of that. And most organizations I've worked in, well, all the organizations I've worked in, I've had to go in and make changes and do something different, either because it didn't work, or because there's a better way to create employee engagement. But you just come in with I think we can improve on this if we did this, as opposed to we're doing it wrong. And you're involving them in the positive change that's happening.
And then for those that may not have a seat on the executive table, how do we have that same impact?
Data.
Okay.
Being able to produce the data, being able to demonstrate your research. Again, you may get frustrated because you're like, I know HR, why are they? But you need to go in with the facts and also demonstrate, this is why I think if we did this, this is what will happen. What's the outcome? And what's the purpose? Like, sometimes we change things because we just didn't like it that way. Well, let's change it, because once we tell people there's a reason for it, there's a reason that will help the organization, then we're able to get buy-in. And also, you may want to try to do a roadshow, I call it, where you're introducing it. This is where those general side conversations with executives are going in, and just walking up to the CFO and saying, how are you today? And having a conversation, and then saying, have you thought about this? I was looking at this, and being able to engage them in a topic. And then before you know it, somebody else is asking for it. And then you're making the change. Years ago, I had somebody, I brought up an idea and they didn't like it in 1 year, and a year later somebody else presented it and they loved the idea. And the person sitting next to me goes, didn't you present that last year? And I go, let me tell you, I don't care. If we're going to implement it,
let's do it.
I'm excited. Yeah, right. Sometimes you have to let it go, and the credit is, the joy isn't in the credit, the joy is in the results, right?
Amen.
So if listeners take away just one powerful insight from today's conversation, something that could maybe truly help them redefine their purpose as an HR or business professional, and find fulfillment, what would that be?
It's spring is coming. I know it's so cold, but it's coming. Go and sit outside with a journal and start writing down what your goals are, what you want to do. And I'm going to give you a little tip. Take those goals and put them in a Chat GPT or Copilot.
I love it.
And save them, and start asking questions. Give me ideas. And then start framing it into what you should implement first. But what's that strategy? But I think I would just sit down and write down your aspirations and dreams, and start with that, and then walk it back into how you can create that path. But with the rejuvenation of spring, go get some sun and air, and really put that together, and put some time to sit down and read something or listen to a podcast that can help inspire you. Carve out time in your day, whether it's while you're working out, walking, or just sitting outside or taking a car ride, but make sure you're doing that to improve yourself.
Great.
Very nice, very nice. So what kind of things you got going on in your life right now that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, so Maryland SHRM, definitely, we have a lot going on there. We have our Maryland SHRM conference here in October 5th through 7th, in Ocean City, Maryland. So I'm working with the team on that. Personally, I work for a nonprofit here based out of Maryland that serves individuals with developmental disabilities called Unified Community Connections. I love that because it's such a purpose. It's providing a service to the community. But that's really fun, and I'm teaching my daughter how to drive right now. So it's
sure
like
that's fun.
yeah. So I have to take a lot of deep breaths, but she's very good at all that. She's thoughtful. So I'm not worried, but I love that part of it. But I have my own, my workout plans, my ideas. I love travel, so doing more things with travel, and just continuing my certification and learning and growing. And I love AI. I definitely love the access to AI and ChatGPT and Copilot. It just helps you dig deeper in research and questions. And I think being able to figure out how to use that in my work a little bit more, I just love it. Love the technology.
So do I.
Yeah.
Well, how can folks connect with you?
Yes.
So do you have LinkedIn? Well, I know you have LinkedIn. I'm connected with you, but what else do you have? Do you have anything else?
Nope, just LinkedIn is really the best way to connect with me.
Great.
It's my name, John Mauck, on LinkedIn. But yeah, I mean, and obviously SHRM, through the Maryland SHRM website. Also, I sit on the Frederick County SHRM board. I can't get away from them. So so I'm there too.
I hear you.
But yeah, come to a meeting, connect with me there if you want. But I'd love to see people at conferences if you want to come up and talk to me, have any questions. But I do respond to my LinkedIn messages, so you respond to me there.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking some time aside and sitting down with us and chatting. And I'm sure this won't be the last time as we develop our conversations. And there's definitely different topics that we didn't even get to that I know we can always expand on. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for your time, John.
Yeah.
And
thank you
we
for the
appreciate
opportunity. Thank you. You too.
If you're feeling stretched thin, juggling big changes, emotional labor, and communication breakdowns, you're not alone. Hi everyone, I'm Dan Kaplan, founder of Bring Disc to Life, an online community for aspiring leaders and HR professionals. We give you the strategies, tools, and encouragement to communicate in ways that increase your influence while lowering your stress. Using DISC, the 5 behaviors, and mindfulness, you'll learn to stay grounded, read minds, and frame your message to influence others. We have live workshops every month, group coaching to unpack tough situations, and tons of easy-to-use scripts, strategies, and resources that you can apply right away without adding more to your plate. So come refuel with a community that gets you and wants to help you speak your truth in a way that's heard. Join us at confidentcommunicator.com and click on community. That's confidentcommunicator.com. Lead yourself and others will follow.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond HR podcast. We hope today's episode inspired you to reflect and grow in your own HR journey. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Beyond HR Podcast. If you found value here, share it with your fellow HR professionals. Until next time, keep making an impact on yourself.